Hi everyone, my name is Dhillon. I am a founder and partner at Signia Ventures, an early stage VC fund in the Bay Area. And welcome to episode 1 of, we just named the show, Hack the Gibson. So if you've seen the movie Hackers, you'll get it. If you haven't, go watch it right now. After you watch this. We'd like to welcome my guest today. We're going to be talking about AR and VR and mixed reality. So here with Robert Scoble.
What's going on?
And Tipatat Chennavasin. So going to let these guys do some quick intros. Then we got a good 30 minutes or so to chat today. So pretty excited.
Yeah. Well, I'm Robert Scoble, and I launched tech companies as journalist or futurist or whatever you call me. Siri was launched in my son's bedroom. I got the first ride in the first Tesla before Elon Musk gave his best friend a ride. So, and that's what I do. I put that up on Facebook.
Alexa, who is Robert Scoble?
Robert Scoble is an American blogger, technical evangelist, and author.
There you go. That's who he is.
This is like phone a friend.
That is legit.
This is like
when
being
the
on.
cloud AI knows who you are.
This is like being on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. We have we have an assistant underneath the counter here. This is the first podcast I've done with Alexa.
Tip, go ahead, man. Give us an intro.
Hi, everyone. I'm Tipatat Chennavasin. I'm co-founder and general partner of the Venture Reality Fund. We're an early-stage VC that focuses on AR, VR, and MR investments. My claim to fame, I think, is that I've looked at over 1,800 companies in the space over the past 2.5-3 years. And so far, we've done 17 investments. Look to doing a lot more.
Yeah.
Great. So we've got a bunch of stuff that we're going to talk about today and try and apply a little bit of structure to it as we go. So guys, let's talk a little bit about State of the Union right now. You know, we get all of us, on the investing side and the business side, working in the business, we're bombarded with different stats, different numbers, different reports, third parties that are constantly, peddling their forecasts for where the industry is going. So when we're thinking about HoloLens, Rift, Vive, PSVR, and the numbers that we're aware of and what we're seeing adoption-wise, including, we should add in there, the mobile players as well, Daydream, et cetera. How are we feeling?
And this is before Apple is announced.
We're getting there. We're going to get there. 5 million Samsung units.
Yeah.
The unit, I can't remember the numbers for the Vive and for the Rift post touch, for example. What are our thoughts if we focus on ex-Apple for a moment?
I think today, in February 2017, because in a year this is going to sound a little dated, isn't it? Today we are seeing the market striate into 3 areas, right? There's the free or nearly free Google Cardboard stuff that they're giving away at conferences and stuff. There's the mobile VR space, which is like the Samsung Gear VR or the Google Daydream, and this new Apple thing will be in that space. So far, that space has not gotten 6 degrees of freedom, which I believe you need to really get true VR.
Your ability to walk around completely, 6 degrees of freedom.
And play Frisbee with your friends or shoot paintball in Rec Room, And then the high end is the HTC Vive, the Oculus Rift, and the Sony PlayStation VR. Sony is doing pretty good, but I don't think Sony has done as well as we were hoping it would do to kick off this market. And I think that's where we are. We're sort of in a weird in-between phase where we haven't sold enough headsets to get Hollywood to spend the big budgets. You are not going to get $200 million to do a VR movie in Hollywood right now because there's not enough headsets out there to justify that kind of expense. So until there is, we're going to get stuff that like we saw at Sundance, short movies, the longest video.
Promotional kind of material.
Well, I don't know about promotional. I mean, Dear Angelica was really amazing. But
shorter form content than the traditional AAA or big Hollywood blockbuster.
Right, Dear Angelica is 15 minutes, right, or 10 to 15 minutes. And so we haven't yet seen the big Star Wars or the big movie budgets because there's just no headset. And I think that's where we are. We're sort of waiting for the headsets.
What are you thinking on that, man? Headset wise, gaming could be an initial foray that we've seen some initial traction in, from Steam downloads of Survios, et cetera. What are you thinking for current State of the Union? What are you happy with? What are you unhappy with?
So, as a VC, the way we look at this too, it's not just about the product. It's not just about headsets sold, but it's about the ecosystem. How are the app developers doing? How are the software developers, the game makers, what's going on in the ecosystem, right? You can say the Wii was a phenomenal product for Nintendo. it was a terrible platform. All third-party developers, for the majority of it, didn't do well on the Wii ecosystem. And so what we're seeing is the opposite effect, where, okay, definitely we would love to see better headset numbers sold, but even with the small number of headsets that are being sold, and we're saying, like, I think the latest numbers on the Vive was somewhere between like 500,000 to 600,000 of them, and we can only talk about Vive because the Steam Spy and Steam Store data is available. And I think I just saw a report today that there are 12 titles that have actually generated over $1 million in revenue.
That's pretty cool.
Within the Steam Store.
So these small numbers of people are highly engaged and are spending money, which I certainly am seeing in my experience.
And what's great is for indie developers, right? Like right now, if you're an indie developer and you want to make a game, yeah, you can't make a $100 million, $200 million game, but you can make a $500,000 game and then recoup and be profitable within a year. That's insane. Like right now, if you're trying to make a mobile game, you need at least $1 million for the marketing budget.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, it's so crowded. It's so noisy out there.
And so there is this opportunity, and it's not the big opportunity yet, but this is what we see at the beginning of every ecosystem, right?
Yeah.
This is why, before the big players like the EAs and the Disneys want to get involved, that's the opportunity for the little companies. It's the innovator's dilemma, and it creates the opportunity for the Zyngas and the Supercells, and now we're seeing with these new companies like the Alchemy Labs out there.
Sure.
They did 3.3 million in
Job
revenue
Simulator,
in VR, which is amazing.
What do you guys think of the focus that's been? Some folks have said that Oculus went very heavy on games. We've talked a little bit about cinematic and storytelling. Dear Angelica, what the guys over at Penrose, Baobab, there's Weaver, name it. There's a lot of very talented people out there right now. In terms of funding dollars, Tipatat, I think you're an investor in some of those companies I just mentioned. When you're talking about the platforms having been quite heavily focused on gaming as an initial go-to, that reflects upon gamers always being early to new platforms. It's typical with any new consumer technology. Robert, I'm sure you could attest to that. Where do you think now going forward, the cinematic storytelling side, which perhaps one could argue, and most likely, what most would argue, has a broader audience than just the hardcore gamers with a high ARPU, for example?
Well, I think it's hard too, because how are they monetizing, right? How are developers actually making money back against their projects and their budgets? And the one thing that we're seeing is, right now, at least on cinematic side, especially on 360, no one's really paying for it, and so it's really, it's being financed by the advertisers or by the platform people or other funding outside.
So not
sources.
end users.
But it's not end
viewers.
users. And so that's a little bit of a tricky problem.
Here's an honest question for you guys. Just given continued retention of those of us who have been early adopters, out of your Vive, I know we all have all the headsets and access to all the headsets here. We're in a fortunate position for that. Out of your Rift, your Vive, your Daydream, let's just go through all of them, without naming them all.
Yeah.
Which one are you using the least?
The Gear VR I very rarely use.
Okay, Tip?
Yeah, same. Gear VR probably.
Okay, I actually would be a third on that and agree. In terms of the higher end non-mobile headsets, which one would you rate that you've used the least? For me, it's
PlayStation VR.
That's Gathering Dust for me right now.
And I think this also kind of speaks to it too when you're talking earlier about this really emphasis on games and also on entertainment. Like $800 plus a PC, that's a lot for a game console, but it's cheap for the holodeck. And so if you think about this more as an open-ended computing platform, and you're finding out where are people finding value, why are people using this every day? And what's amazing is in the art community, especially the 3D art community for game designers, special effects people. These are people that are actually starting to use these 3D art tools in VR, whether it's a tilt brush or a medium, to do work and actually provide value. And for them, it's like, okay, this changes everything. This is so inexpensive for what they can now do so much quicker, faster to get their ideas from their head into a scene that other people can experience.
Yeah, yesterday we had a company come here and let me walk around a network in HoloLens, right? So you're starting to see companies think about this world that's coming and how we're going to work together. This has been going on for a while, though. Disney's new theme park in Shanghai, China was built in VR. Ford's cars are built in VR, et cetera, et cetera. The enterprise has always seemed to lead even before the gamers got in. But this world is a gaming world. The Unity development tool that most of the VR companies are using came out of the gaming world, right? And so the people with the skill set to build 3D things came out of the gaming world. So there's this heavy gaming
Yep.
influence that you're seeing. But I'm seeing new kinds of companies like this network company that showed up yesterday, or Sephora's building augmented reality makeup, or
Yep.
on and on. We're seeing education, we're seeing shopping, we're seeing medical. Before we turned on the microphones, we were talking about that, right? So there's a bunch of use cases that are coming that have nothing to do with gaming, and I think that's really positive.
Actually, I mean, that's one of the developments I'm really excited for. I think when a lot of people were like, well, Microsoft announced a VR headset. What does that mean? Aren't they all in with AR and the HoloLens?
Right.
Why are they doing the VR headset? And it's $299, it can be powered by any laptop. How does that even work? And I think the idea is, they've never talked about gaming. They've always talked about, enterprise and work and finding out new ways to work.
It's been an enterprise device from day one. The
Exactly.
positioning has very much
Yeah,
been that.
exactly.
And it's retained its gaming authenticity with its Xbox brand. And it's kind of contained its gaming brand within its Xbox brand.
Yeah.
That's interesting. We'll move off this topic to a new one in a minute. But
Yeah.
what do you guys think from an evangelizing perspective? Obviously, we've talked about enterprise applications. We'll come back to that, put a pin in that for now. When we think about mass consumer introductions to VR, at first there was talk around the Best Buy exposure, Facebook opening up its store. I think they have a pop-up store somewhere here in the Bay.
Yeah.
What about mixed reality location-based entertainment? So here we're talking about the Void, Nomadic Labs, zero latency VR. Tip, you and I have talked about this a bunch. Robert, I'm sure you're familiar with this
Yeah.
stuff. What do you think of that as being like a Chuck E. Cheese or a movie theater lobby kind of exposure? They're everywhere. Everyone's going to kind of be able to go try them the way that you can in New York City with the
I
Void.
call these theme parks.
Theme parks, theme parks.
Micro theme parks.
Micro theme parks.
The Void is a great example. I played the Ghostbusters experience in Times Square
Yep.
at the Wax Museum. And there you're in virtual reality with 7 of your friends. You get a specialized gun, a specialized headset, and a suit that you wear. And when the ghosts go through you, you feel it
Vibrates,
with the
yeah.
suit. It's really crazy,
Yeah.
weird, right?
I thought it lent itself really well because you have to be wearing a PC at the
Yeah,
time,
yeah.
but the
feels like
skin
a
of it
proton pack.
feels like a proton pack. It actually works with
Yes.
Ghostbusters.
Yeah.
It works really well.
And then the ceilings are tracked with motion capture cameras at the same time, I believe, as well, to actually track certain items that you'll be able to.
Yeah. At one point, the game forced me out onto this painter scaffold outside of a
Yep.
high-rise building,
Yep.
and the scaffold was shaking.
So you feel like you're going to fall because you feel like you're 50 stories
Instantly,
up. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you intuitively, keep in mind I'm in VR, I only am seeing virtual things, but intuitively I grab onto the rail I see.
Because you feel like you're going to fall.
You feel like you're going to fall, but there's a real rail there.
yeah.
And
It's awesome.
by the way, it's shaking.
Oh, yeah.
Like the scaffold on the side of a building would be shaking, and that really freaks out your mind.
What's awesome
And-
about that too, it's actually the person that's the guide with you shakes it. It's like low tech. It's a great test bed for new technologies like haptics, like feedback or different input systems.
Yeah.
And what's going to be
Guns.
cool is we're going to start seeing a lot of that trickle down, like with the Vive now releasing their accessory pack that lets you track other objects. You could track your dog, you could track your chair, all these kinds of stuff.
Or
And you
gun
could-
or whatever,
You could create
yeah.
these like mixed
Yeah.
reality experiences in your home as well. So
Okay, guys. So let's move on. We know that Robert, you've been quite vocal in your support of what Apple's been working on.
Yeah.
It's gotten a lot of buzz. And more recently, I don't want to just keep on Apple. I also want to talk about Magic Leap with the leaked photo that just emerged. I think you actually had some response from Roni to talk about that.
Yeah.
Why don't you give us like a quick, high-level nutshell version of
Yeah.
with Magic Leap first, and then we'll come on to Apple.
Well, actually, I would like to do it the other way around.
right, go ahead.
I think Apple's the more important one because a lot of people have iPhones in their pockets, and so they're going to upgrade in the next 2 years to the next iPhone. And the next iPhone, there's going to be 3 of them that are going to be announced in 2017. Will all do mixed reality, which means they'll do VR and AR. Augmented reality, they'll put virtual things on top of the world. And this comes out of a conversation that Steve Jobs and Tim Cook had 7 years ago about the future of television. And what this really does represent is a real change in how we're going to get entertained in a few years, right? First of all, let's start out with just television. Using these devices, and it won't just be a phone. There's also Apple's also going to bring out a 3-ounce pair of glasses. You're going to get as many screens around you as you want. I have a HoloLens at home, and in my office, I have 5 virtual screens. They look like real screens, like 40-inch, screens that you can work on, and they're around you, and they stay where you left them. So when I go home today, I can put on the HoloLens and see my 5 screens, right? Wearing a HoloLens or wearing these new Apple glasses that are coming in the next year, we're going to be able to look at all sorts of screens.
So you think glasses are coming out this year?
Yes.
Okay. Talk to us specifically about your thoughts on the glasses.
Yeah. Well, it's not just glasses. It's not just one product.
Okay.
It's a family of products. AR is going to be built into the products, and Tim Cook was very clear about that. He said it's not a product. It's something you're going to get on your phone, on your TV, on your iPad, on your glasses.
Cross-platform, yeah.
Across a lot of products. The TV, let's talk about the TV. You're going to put a 3D sensor on that TV box. Why would I want a 3D sensor on my TV box? Now I can do full body VR. I can do kickboxing in my living room, right? Or I can do yoga, right? I can't do that in an HTC Vive because it can't see my feet, right?
So I mean, Kinect was the idea behind the Kinect originally, right?
Yeah,
With
and
Microsoft.
Kinect came out of PrimeSense, which is the company that Apple bought, and Kinect became the HoloLens because they turned the sensor around and put it on your face looking out so you can get inside-out VR tracking. So now you get 6 degrees of freedom without putting stupid boxes on your walls. I'm sorry, HTC and Oculus, a normal person is not going to do that. It's too expensive. It's too nerdy. Just not going to happen. But everybody has a phone.
I think
everybody.
Bose
Every
did
kid.
pretty well with their like home theater setup where you had those stupid little cubes in your wall, right?
Surround sound.
Yeah.
But how many have they sold compared to a phone?
That is true.
Every kid in Mumbai has a phone, right?
But then, as we've seen too, like there are people solving that with like inside-out tracking. I mean, it's just the first
It's true.
generation, right?
At CES, we saw a company from Stanford that's doing inside-out tracking. Qualcomm is showing it. Whether it works that
Microsoft
well.
has it with their
Yeah.
HoloLens as well. So
Yeah.
I feel like, I mean, at least that part of the equation has been solved. But so the one thing that I do think Apple's going to come in. They're going to come in big, but I'd be shocked if Apple came in this early. Like it's so not the Apple way, right? Like usually what they do is they let the technology kind of battle itself out. They let and then come in like 5 years after everyone else with a very
That's not true.
complete vision.
iPod came out a few years after the creative audio player.
I mean,
the
but a
world
couple
is
years
sped
after
up.
everything, right?
5 years today.
But with the watch, their last big product, the watch, I mean, they came out way after all the
look
other
at
watches,
what Apple
right?
has done.
Okay.
You have to look at what Apple has invested in.
Okay.
And Apple has spent, I don't know, more than $10 billion buying small little startups to do AI, to do face tracking, to do inside positional tracking, they bought PrimeSense that does this 3D sensor. They bought Metaio, which was the #1
Face
AR. Face Shift is doing face tracking and face stuff. They bought a whole range of little companies, and some of which I don't even know about, right?
I'm sure there's been smaller ones that haven't made the headlines. I don't doubt that.
Yeah.
Further to your point, Tip, where you're talking about is it too soon for the Apple way versus what the Apple way forward is going to be?
Keep in mind, the iPhone was the first touch phone we saw. Well, I didn't see a touch phone before the iPhone. I hear there was one, but nobody used it because it wasn't a Nokia or.
But in the smartphone category, right? I mean, there was the Windows Phone.
Sure.
There was
I know, but there
BlackBerry,
wasn't
there was all
anybody
those
who
others.
showed us
Yeah.
touch.
Sure.
And this is a new user interface, and it's going to cause some major winners and some major losers. Every time our industry changes user interfaces, big companies go away. When we went from DOS to Windows, Borland and WordPerfect went away. When we went to touch, BlackBerry and Nokia really went away, at least in the phone business, although Nokia's coming back with a phone.
And a
No,
camera.
I mean, you can say that too. Like anytime there's a shift, right? That's a time for dominant players to be uprooted and shifted. And
That's the
right
Schumpeter
now,
kind of stuff,
Apple is
yeah.
the dominant player, so this is the prime opportunity for them to be uprooted and shifted, right?
Which gets us into Magic Leap. So
Let's just give everyone a quick overview of what happened. So they tell us a little bit about your conversation with Roni, the picture that leaked.
let's set up. Magic Leap is doing glasses.
Yeah.
Is doing a mixed reality glass with a 3D sensor with optics that put virtual stuff on top of the real world, just like a HoloLens. Only they are trying to do something better than everybody else. They were aiming at an optic that would have 6 degrees of refocusability on the virtual items so that the items would feel more natural and would look more real. Because like this glass that's on our table here, when my eye focuses on the glass, the background is blurred. And so if I'm going to put a virtual item on that glass, like a little guy who's going to jump into the water here, the Magic Leap will focus on the virtual item on close up, so it'll be more natural and feel more natural, and it won't cause as much brain strain as some of the AR glasses are going to cause people. The philosophy of Magic Leap is to start out with mixed reality and not worry about anything else. They're building an entire world for mixed reality, where Apple, if mixed reality doesn't do well and everybody just buys the phone, they're still doing a huge
The market cap still made a big jump, yeah.
Huge business, right? If they sell 150 million phones, Apple is not going anywhere anytime soon. Magic Leap has a little pack in your pocket
for batteries.
That's for the processing, because they want to use a bigger GPU than Apple has. Apple's going to go with a small GPU for a phone or a pair of glasses, right? And Magic Leap is going to go with a bigger GPU that's down in your pocket. And they're going to run a fiber optic cable up to the glasses so that you can do stuff that's just not going to be possible in a
small form factor.
Small form factor yet. But they're boiling the ocean, right?
Yeah.
They have to make an operating system. They have to make the glasses, which
Content.
have eye sensors, optics, all the stuff that goes into making hardware. And you know how hard hardware is. It's really hard for a company that doesn't have Foxconn geared up.
Right.
What if Magic Leap is the coolest thing you've ever seen? And
Well, I mean,
100 million sell?
it could be the biggest intentional misdirect of all time if they, the Weta stuff that came out. So they put out a video which will show the inside the office shooting the Alien game that ended up being fully created the way that you would in the special effects shop. Weta, the guys who did Lord of the Rings.
Yep.
So do you think that how much, the word we hear quite often is vaporware, but then there's still plenty of people in the Valley who would be clamoring to do a secondary share purchase in that company right now. There were actually not too long ago when that was happening. It's raised $1.4 billion at a 4.5 or $4 billion valuation.
Yeah.
Most recently led by Google. Thoughts on
and Alibaba.
And Alibaba, sorry, and thoughts on market timing, when it's going to have a product that's ready.
The real problem is, how does it compare to Apple?
Okay.
And if Apple comes out with
where you stand. All right.
Well, because come on, Apple has 450 stores. They have a brand I want on my face. Magic Leap doesn't have that.
Any of that, yeah.
And if you're going to get Magic Leap to market, you're going to have to show it to people, i.e. you're going to have to build stores. You're going to have to build a brand that people want on their face, i.e. you're going to have famous people wearing it and a cool advertising campaign to get people aware of it.
I'm wearing it in the shower.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
I'm gonna get
I'll
you
wear it in the shower. A great product will survive that kind of abuse,
Your
right?
famous photo right now.
Yeah, famous. Yeah. That'll be on my grave score.
What are your thoughts on Magic Leap, man?
I think a lot of people are like, oh, is this the Theranos of VR AR? I mean, I think, honestly, I still haven't seen it, but I know smart people that have, and they say it is real. It's just about, can they really, they might have over-promised on when they can actually ship it. I feel like there is this rush where oh my God, this is going to happen so fast, so fast, so fast. And this is where we get the inflated expectations that VR has had. And it's like, no, it's not going to happen that fast. It's going to be amazing when it happens, but it's going to be taking its time. HoloLens is a great dev kit, but do you think it's consumer ready?
No.
And more importantly, has Microsoft ever said when the consumer version of it will be out? No. All of the guys that are talking about AR headsets right now, they're just trying to get dev kits to market.
Right.
And if you need time for the developers to make the applications that make it a product, or otherwise it's just technology.
Which means that Magic Leap has not been doing that on scale, at least. Otherwise, we would all know about it. Our portfolio companies would know about it. Companies in the collective would know about it, for example.
For all of Oculus's missteps or whatever in the past year, I mean, the genius of it was they released a dev kit and made it freely available to everyone, brought it down to a low price point, and I think they did 180,000 dev kits sold before one consumer kit was sold.
Yeah.
The problem is we don't know how good Apple is. We do know they're coming, and they're coming big. They're not coming with a little tiny product that can be ignored like the watch. Mm-hmm. This is a product. This is a category of things that is going to be cross product at Apple.
Honestly, too, when you were mentioning Apple's acquisitions of computer vision companies, all of them are applicable for autonomous cars as well.
Yes.
So it's not necessarily like they have to all be for AR. There's a lot of overlap between those.
I think
so much
actually,
cars.
what I would say is phase shift is important for cars.
Why?
Because input.
Oh, for
it's
you
the
to be able to
input system
interact
to
with your
drive
vehicle.
the car. I mean,
Okay, that's
or a lot of the facial recognition stuff. How tired are you? Like,
Yeah,
how
while
alert
you're
are
driving.
you?
Yeah,
Understanding
And
that? Yeah.
actually, it's interesting. I'm starting to see companies trade talent between these two areas because they're the same.
Yeah.
The idea of a 3D car uses a LiDAR or a sensor to see the road ahead. Your glasses are going to have the same thing. They have an AI brain that knows what's new in that scene and controls the LiDARs and controls and compares what it's seeing in the real world to what's in the 3D map. Yep. And the 3D map is really, really important for these self-driving car companies and the mixed reality companies. And so you're going to see, I think, the two merge. And in fact, one way I start believing in Magic Leap is if they announce a product with something like a Mercedes-Benz or a Tesla. Because if I can wear the Magic Leap inside the Tesla and all of a sudden I get an F-35 fighter jet cockpit where I don't see the car anymore, I think they're going to be interesting to watch. I want to play with it and I want to see what they do to push this field forward. But they're going to have a hard time finding a market when the big boys are out there spending this kind of money. I mean, Microsoft and Apple and Facebook and Snap are all spending billions of dollars in R&D and mixed reality. If you're going to come in with a new approach, you have to show up with something that's 10x better, like Google was, right? Google was 10x better than Alta Vista, and I got it in 10 seconds. That's what the consumer's going to give you, 10 seconds. Convince me that Magic Leap is so much better in 10 seconds than my Apple glasses or my HoloLens, right?
Yeah.
It's a high hurdle.
It's a very high hurdle.
But I do say, I want to believe. I feel like there are people actually trying to do it. They're trying to do the right thing. It's not this like smoke and mirror show. And I think it's just harder than everyone thought it would be. But there's a lot of components to going towards it. And I mean, that's the thing. They have to build their own optics. They bought this like factory, like ex-Motorola factory. I mean, they're fabbing all this stuff. It's like, people are like, oh, they have so many people. What are they all doing? It's like, well, AR is so different than VR, right? To make, or mixed reality, to make it feel like it's really there, you have to solve the optics problem. You have to solve the computer vision problem. You have to solve all these crazy hard problems that in VR, we don't have that same kind of issue.
It's a lot more of a controlled ecosystem than when you're building within Unity or you're building within Unreal versus
and the hardware. It's like, oh, we could just repurpose the smartphone hardware to use and piggyback off of that. Like, no, we can't piggyback off of anyone else to do the Magic Leap.
Okay, so let's focus. We talked a lot about the platforms. We've talked a lot about games and entertainment. Each of us, let's pick one specific application that is not related to any of those industries. Tip, I think you mentioned healthcare. I know, Robert, you mentioned security. Choose whatever you want. I was going to talk about education, but you guys go first. Tip, talk about an application of AR or VR that you think you're really interested in, and let's keep it maybe to an investment discussion, something that your fund has been interested in sector-wise.
Sure. I think a lot of times too, when people are like, okay, consumer adoption is a little bit slow, where can we look for places where consumer adoption doesn't even matter? And so when you look at these enterprise use cases, especially in healthcare, and where are people finding solutions using this technology that didn't exist before or have a 10x improvement? One of the ones we just recently did, actually, I don't know if I can announce it. I won't talk about it. Okay, well, we'll just say that there's definitely these interesting spaces within healthcare where you're either doing things like, definitely doing things like solving people's phobias or, pain, relaxation, reducing pain, reducing stress, but also doing things like, and this is the one I love, where people always talk about VR. You're wearing these headsets. Aren't they bad for your eyes? Do you worry about that? Well, I mean, this is super anecdotal, but I've been doing VR almost like probably an hour roughly every day.
How thick
for the
are
past
those
2
glasses,
years.
Tip? How thick are they?
My prescription hasn't changed at all since I've been
good.
doing heavy VR.
Yeah.
But what's more interesting is there's this one company, they're called Vivid Visions, and they got good press from Time. What they did, the founder himself, James Blaha, he actually made a little program in the DK1, cured himself of his own lazy eye, went from 70/20 to his bad eye to 20/20 in just within a year, essentially, of training. So you can see how they're using VR to actually make your eyes get better.
Yep.
And what I say is the lenses are the trick that will help VR be comfortable. And I think that your cell phone's actually worse for your eyes than VR is. Because I wake up in the morning and if I check my email, text or whatever, I can sometimes get narrow focus for the rest of the day. and I can't
Yeah.
drive, I can't do anything. But VR, because the lenses make it feel like it's a comfortable distance away from you, you don't have that same kind of problem.
Yeah.
Anyways, a long way. Sorry.
So healthcare, within
But within healthcare
optometry,
too.
for
But
example,
and just finding those use cases again where there was no other solution. So just to kind of break it down a little bit more, so what he's been able to do since he cured himself was, now he's brought it out to I think over 70 clinics, treated over 2,500 patients with a 60% success rate, which is huge in that category.
Wow.
Because right now, if you're suffering from diplopia, the only treatment you have works when you're juvenile and is only 40% effective.
Yeah.
And what they found is their treatment works across adults and juvenile and children. And so that's giving a cure for people that had no real option aside for the small percentage that could do surgery. But then again, surgery is hugely risky. And
So an interesting play in ophthalmology and optometry, it sounds like.
Exactly.
Robert, what do you think?
How much time are we talking about a year from now or 5 years from now or 10 years from now? Because I would give you a different answer.
Something
based
that
on
you've seen now, like in the near
Okay.
term.
Right now, the things that I think people will try the first time when they first get VR or AR is social gaming with friends, shooting your friend in paintball, for instance, in Rec Room is really, really fun. And this is why I insist on my friends getting 6 Degrees of Freedom in VR, because those are the fun first experiences that show you that you can play something over the internet, like throw a Frisbee with me, that is going to get people addicted. Where I'm excited is work apps organized around that. I've seen apps where when you're coding, you get as many screens around you as you want. So when you click on a variable name, it can pop up 5 new screens and show you the code that's affected by that variable name. And the companies that I'm seeing up in Seattle and other places are building offices or virtualized offices for you to work with other people on something real, like a Ford car, for instance. And that's the most exciting long-term thing for me. But short-term, I think social and gaming is going to be the number one space.
I think for me, it's actually a plug for a portfolio company of ours, actually. 8i.
Yeah.
They're pioneers in volumetric video capture, creating holograms in VR.
Yep.
So the idea of what that means for the workplace, for when telepresence becomes a thing, what I think of is the Star Wars Council, where the Jedi are all sitting around the table having a meeting as if that person's really there, but Yoda's sitting on Kashyyyk instead. So
Yep.
The idea of being able to do meetings with the person looking from a photogrammetry perspective, looking very realistic to what they should look like, moving realistically around the same space as you, kind of akin to what we saw with Microsoft's holoportation video, that was done as a test about a year ago or so now. So I'm pretty excited about what that means for the future of work. Imagine also like a mother being able to record her baby's first steps, right? And forever be able to record that. I think of that scene in Minority Report. This leads us to our next question, but where he's able to see his son running around in the living room, for example. Yeah. Once you've got that data for what the hologram should look like, being able to replay that back on AR is just as easy as it is.
I don't know if you guys ever saw that USC did a piece for Steven Spielberg, and it was like Holocaust Survivor.
Oh,
and what they did, it was a light field capture, and there's like a mirror, and you could just talk to the person.
Yeah,
it felt like you're
so
like in the room with them. But now to open it up and let everyone do that, you capture your grandparents, and you go back and actually like cook
time capsule
with your great grandparents.
This
is why I asked you how much time, how many years.
Sorry.
Because
we did go into the future a little bit.
Yes.
4 years for sports on your kitchen table.
We did go
10 years
future.
for more, and but coming closer is going to be entertainment, education, and education alone. I think that was going to be
I ended up deciding to go in another direction, but when we've talked about pop culture representations of what VR is. For me, we're talking about the show's called Hack the Gibson, for example. So we're talking about The Matrix, Lawnmower Man, more recently Minority Report, etc. What pop culture manifestation of AR or VR was perhaps the one that came to your mind when you were like, oh, I'm actually working in this business now. It's something that's that's what is kind of the stereotype that you have in your head from let's just go from a
Black Mirror.
Black Mirror
forecast.
Yeah.
That's a forecast.
Black Mirror, if you want depressing, sad.
I don't know. It's a forecast that's coming true really fast.
Unfortunately. I mean, you can say too, The Matrix is actually
everything from the Prime Minister stuff with the pig all the way through
it's
to
so scary.
It was too true. It was too true.
The one most people inside the business mention is Ready Player One.
Of course, yeah.
The book that yeah.
But for me, it's definitely the Matrix. I mean, that's why too. When I got my
Talk about
DK2,
what you did. Yeah.
I actually built a recreation of the Matrix with a friend of mine, Eric Bale, and John Dadley. And the idea was, at the time there was some
Talk about what
rough
you do in
VR
the
experiences where they're like, okay. VR movies were just sitting in a movie theater and just watching a 2D movie, and I was like, no, I want a VR movie to feel like how you dream of movie experiences, right? You go to sleep and you don't dream of yourself watching Neo. You are Neo. You are talking to Morpheus. And we felt like with VR we could start playing with those ideas. And what was really interesting about it was, we set it up so that you meet Morpheus. He explains to you the world is a computer simulation while you're in the computer simulation. So a little meta there. And then because there were 6 degrees of freedom, we could do things like actually dodge the bullets in bullet time. And then we realized how amazing VR scale is. And so we wanted to do the jump program where you jump across the building.
No one ever makes the first jump.
Yes, and so we actually programmed it so you're very likely to not make it on the first jump. And I don't know how many times I did the jump. I programmed it so I was falling, and then bouncing off the ground just like in the movie.
Yep.
But through that process, I accidentally cured myself of my real life fear of heights. And that was my aha moment for VR. And that was kind of like this to me, we're there. We're in, and it wasn't about looking real. I think it was that feeling real. Having that 6 degrees of freedom where I could look at all the different angles of an object. No visual medium has ever given us that before. Even a 3D movie, as soon as you turn your head to look around the object, you realize it's just an optical illusion. Yeah. And so that is the thing that, for me, brings the reality into VR, right? That it really, closes that loop and lets you feel, even if it doesn't look visually as authentic, but it has that feeling of weight and volume and space. But if you're asking me too, where I really get a lot of inspiration, I think I look at Harry Potter. And I think for me, VR is not about technology, but it's about the experience. And it should be magical. And all those things that you wished existed in a magical world should now feel possible and be intuitive and fun and magical. And for me, I'm like, give me more Harry Potter. Less Blade Runner, sci-fi tech stuff. I want it to just
pure magic.
Exactly.
The amount that I wouldn't have paid, I wish there had been a Kickstarter campaign to actually go fund a full game version of Trials of Tatooine. The first time that you came close on an HTC Vive to feeling like actually wielding a lightsaber as a Jedi, that's what I would have paid full money to see a real experience out of that.
Yes.
And the fact they gave it away for free, thank you ILM. But, okay, guys, this has been a great first episode. Thank you so much for being here with me. And we look forward to getting all your guys' questions. That you're going to be able to find this up on YouTube. There'll be some stuff on Snapchat and Instagram as well. Email me at sunny@signiavc.com if you want to get in touch. Look forward to hearing your questions and ideas for future episodes. Thank you.
Thanks so much for having us.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Fun time.
Thank you, Upload VR.
Thank you, Upload. Thanks, Ass.